The outline, like I mentioned earlier, is optional. Terry Brooks is a big fan of outlines, and Anne McCaffrey has never done one. The big breakdown for a lot of writers, and sometimes they'll sort of say, are you a plotter or a pantser, is whether they outline and plan out their book or if they just write each scene as it comes and then figure out the next scene as they go. And there's all sorts of writers who've been very successful as both plotters and pantsers, and gardeners is another name for pantsers. And so George R. R. Martin is a pantser, he's a gardener. Terry Brooks is a plotter. And so pantsers, they just as they're writing the story, they just keep saying what happens next, and they figure it out, and then they move the story along, and then they say what happens next. There's a guy who goes by the handle Wildbow. I think his real name is John McCrae, and he wrote a web serial called Worm, and it's a superhero serial, and he'd move through the story and he'd get the characters into really tough situations, and then he'd think and think and think and think how they could creatively use their powers to get out of this really hard situation, which they then do and move on. So that's a pantser. He doesn't have the whole story planned out. He's just writing it scene at a time and then basically figuring out how creatively the characters can get themselves out of the jam that they've gotten into, and then the story moves along and it gets them into another jam. Plotters write out their outline, they write out their plan, and then they follow that. And it's not a contract. You can change things as you go. If you get to a certain point in the outline or the plan and you have a good idea to do something differently, you can change it. But they kind of work out the skeleton of what their story is going to look like, and then they just write it out sentence after sentence, page after page, working their way through that outline and the plan. Few writers are really pure versions of these. So I wouldn't say that like writers are 100% plotter or 100% pantser. Most people have tendencies more to one or the other, but aren't kind of like absolutes. And so I'd absolutely suggest you try both and figure out what you are. Trying to do an outline, trying to write to the outline, try to do just writing a scene at the time at a time and figuring out what comes next, and see which feels right for you. The problem with pantsers that they seem to get into is that writing takes them a lot longer, and they seem to get stuck. And so I think George R. R. Martin, his pantsing is what's got him blocked on Winds of Winter. So he's trying to figure things out from the situation that he's put himself in. And if he'd just written an outline for the entire series, that would take him right through to the end. And if he'd figured out what was going to happen through it, he would have finished the series years ago. It would have been a lot easier for him to write. Um, I make up later on. I'm going to talk about a book that I recommend called 2K to 10K, and it's increasing your writing productivity. And the author of that basically went from being a pantser to being a plotter. So she found when she was just sitting there trying to figure it out as she was writing, it took her forever. But if she worked it out and then wrote up what she'd worked out, she was dramatically faster. And so I think plotters are more productive. They get more words out. For me personally, I'm far more on the plotter side, and I make a point form list of what's going to happen over the whole story. And then before I write each chapter, I go through and I make a point form list of what's going to happen in the chapter that I'm about to write. And so I find that kind of keeps me going at a pretty good pace. When I've kind of worked everything out, I know then what's going to happen, and I just have to write it up. I have to turn it from a point form list into what's happening to actual text in the narrative. And if there's any problems, I see it when I'm doing the point form list. And so I'll see something, I'll be like, well, wait, that doesn't make sense for this reason. And it's really easy to fix it. Whereas if I'd written 3 chapters before I realized something made sense, it would be really heartbreaking to just throw that all away and go back and start rewriting them. Uh, with your first draft, I'm going to be a little bit I'm going to be a little bit facetious here, unfortunately, but there used to be these things in comic books and in kids' activities where they teach you how to draw Donald Duck or something like that. And they'd say, draw an oval and then do this and do this. And there was this joke in the Tick years ago where they started showing you how to draw the tick, and they started doing these things with these shapes. And then they were like, now draw the tick holding this shape that you've drawn. And so it's just, you learn to draw the tick by drawing the tick. And that's actually how a lot of artists treat drawing, as they learn to draw by drawing. I took a drawing class with my wife right when COVID was starting, and we only got the first, I think that we only got the first class, and then COVID canceled all the others. But we showed up, and I kind of thought that the first class she might be telling us writing techniques and going through how to do it. But she basically only showed us one technique, which was we were going to take a picture of a face, of a person's face from a magazine, and it had been bisected with all these lines on it. And then we were going to take drawing paper that had also been bisected with the same number of squares. And she said, in each square, just draw what's in the corresponding square on the picture. And so instead of having to draw the whole face, it was just basically a divide and conquer approach. She was saying, draw what's in each of these boxes. And then as you did this, it would then become the face of the person you were drawing. And within 5 minutes of the class, she just really quickly said what technique we were using. And then we all just started drawing, and we drew for the rest of the class. And so there wasn't any techniques, there wasn't any how to draw she was telling us. She just gave us a project, and she said, you're going to learn how to draw by drawing. You're going to learn how by completing this project. And to me, writing is very similar. So you're going to learn how to write, not by anybody telling you writing techniques or anybody telling you how to do things, but you're just going to learn how to write by writing. You're going to embark on a writing project, and you're going to complete that. And you're going to learn a bunch of things writing that. And then you're going to move on to the next project, and you're going to work on that project. And then you're going to learn a bunch more things writing, doing that project. And so you literally just do it. And so a lot of people who are interested in writing, they're waiting for somebody to give them permission, or they're waiting for somebody to tell them the secret, or they're waiting for somebody to say, here's how to do it. And you just start writing. What I found was that when you're doing this, and for your first draft, you basically want to just keep your momentum going, and you just want to keep writing the words. And so don't stop and don't edit what you're writing. When you write a sentence, don't go back and look up the spelling of a word, or don't go back to the sentence and say, that's a little bit awkward, I think I can tighten that up, or I think I can word it better. Just like you're sprinting and you're trying to stay ahead of yourself, just keep writing words, and just trust yourself that you're going to come back to things when you revise it. That's the next part in the process. This isn't what you're going to publish. And so whatever you're writing, you're going to on your next read through, you're going to have a chance to fix it and change it, and you can do that then. And so just get the text down and just keep writing and maintain the forward momentum. NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it's been going on for 20 years now or something. And it just started as this fun little idea by this guy in San Francisco. And it was the idea that a bunch of people would write a novel. They'd write their first novel together in the month of November. So they'd write an entire novel in the month of November. And so a short novel is around 50,000 words. So this was the goalpost of it, that you're going to write 50,000 words in a month, the month of November. And if you divide 50,000 by the 30 days in November, you get 1,667 words per day. And so to write a 50,000 word novel in a month, you have to write 1,667 words in a day. And most people could write 1,667 words in like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. So with kind of that time frame, you could write a novel. If you could set aside 2 hours a day for the next 30 days, for the next month, you'll have a novel at the end of it. And so if you're interested in writing a book, I challenge you all to do exactly this. If you want, you could do your own NaNoWriMo over the next month. Start tomorrow or start when you get home from the convention and set aside an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. Try to stay on track for writing 1,667 words a day and write 50,000 words in the next 30 days. Or if you want to spend some time thinking about what the ideas that you might want to write up, November's coming up, and so you could do NaNoWriMo this year and you could write a novel in a month. If 50,000 words is too short of a novel and you kind of really want to write something chunkier, and if you had an idea that just needed more words than that and it's going to be longer, then spend 2 months and write a 100,000 word novel, right? That's kind of like epic fantasies. You'll get 100,000 word novels. So you can literally get a first draft of a novel done in a month or two. So if you've really been grappling, you're thinking like, if I'm working on a book, is this going to be a project over the next 5 years that I'm going to work on? Like, how am I going to do this? The first draft could be done in a month. So you could get it done faster than that if you were particularly keen. If you were able to make this kind of your full-time job or something, you could do it faster than that. But I think this is actually a good pace for a first novel, to try to write a novel in a month and try to write around a 50,000 word novel. Writers think in terms of words. So I'm talking about the number of words, which some of you might be thinking like, you've never thought about the number of words. You never thought that there were 50,000 words in a novel or 100,000 words in a novel. Readers think about pages. So you think about a paperback book that has over 300 pages. But that's very reliant on the layout. Like an ebook is going to have a different number of pages than a paperback, and different size paperbacks will dramatically change the number of pages. So for writers, words make more sense. And many people can write 1,000 words in an hour. So as I said, an hour and a half, 2 hours a night could get you a novel in a month. The kind of designations of different lengths isn't something that kind of I view as the most important thing in the world. But a lot of writers and a lot of people thinking about writing are really interested, like, how many words does it have to be? How many words should it be? It should probably be as many words as similar novels. So if there's a convention, romance novels tend to be shorter, epic fantasy tends to be longer. That's the only time I'd sort of say about a should length. But if you wrote an epic romance that was 100,000 words, maybe there's a market for that. Maybe people are interested in that. And if you wrote, an epic fantasy that was released in chunks of like short novellas or something, maybe people would like that. I don't know. This is just one scale. This isn't something that there's like an absolute truth, but I think this is from the Readsy website or something. And they define a novel as having more than 40,000 words. So the 50,000 word novel from National Write a Novel Month is a novel. They define a novella as being between 17,500 words and 40,000 words. They define a novelette. You don't really hear the term a whole lot, novelette, but that's 7,700 words to 17,500 words. And then they define short story as less than 7,500 words, and flash fiction is less than 1,500 words. These things are ambiguous. I could certainly imagine a 1,000-word short story, but they'd call that flash fiction. Merchant Magician that I wrote is an urban fantasy novella, and I had a reviewer one time refer to it as a short story. And I kind of found that a little bit annoying, because to me it was 37,000 words. It's clearly longer than a short story, but to them it was a short story, just because it's shorter than a typical novel. So you'll get people using different terms for different lengths. These aren't a set in stone. It's not a gospel.